All right, what is up, Blue and Gold subscribers? Here we are at Notre Dame Stadium, where we just saw the 91st edition of the annual Blue Gold Spring Game. Patrick, wasn't the most entertaining of spring games. Spring games can go that way. We saw one that went that way for a while there, but Steve Angeli leads a 78-yard touchdown drive on the last drive of the game, walks off as a winner for the Gold team. Gold beats Blue 13-10 at the spring game. Patrick, let's start from that last drive because that was the most exciting part of the game.
Yeah, great moment for Angeli in his first spring practice as an early enrollee freshman. No incompletions on that last drive. Takes the chance when you're on the last play where you know you need to run it in and still gets in there. That was some impressive athleticism and ability to extend plays that you saw there, and then some other moments throughout the entire second half that he played. But interesting little note that we heard from Tommy Rees earlier this spring, that he had mentioned to us that his early enrollee spring semester, he got like no reps, whether that was in the spring game or in practice, just couldn't fit it in. And he went out of his way to make sure Angeli, in a prior scrimmage they had, got reps and situational reps, and certainly that was the case here, where the running clock in the second half stops, and they stop the clock when plays are out of bounds and call timeouts to put him in a 2-minute tempo situation, and where they let him throw the ball and open up a playbook more than how they kind of eased him in there when they had him throw some screens, and he still looked comfortable doing that, but it's a little bit different animal than 2-minute drill, gotta do it, do or die kind of moment where he just kind of looked poised and kind of let it come to him, and I think that's what you want to see from a freshman.
Yeah, I thought the game played out perfectly for Steve Angeli. Got a little bit of time in the first half, but the first half mainly belonged to Drew Pyne. That's what we expected, and it wasn't a Drew Pyne banner day. If this was the day where he was going to establish himself and say, I'm firmly in this quarterback competition, when Tyler Buckner is healthy this fall, it's going to be a two-man race, right? That's what Pyne was trying to do here today. Didn't really do it. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think he went something along the lines of 22 of 33, 185 yards, a touchdown, which was a nice play. It was more of a touchdown as a result of a play call than anything else. A nice little play action, dump it off to a walk-on tight end. But other than that, there were some errant passes from Drew Pyne. It looked like his miss was low, and that usually signals not a lot of zip on the football. There were multiple passes we saw from Drew Pyne today that said, geesh, that's not going to cut it at this level of college football. Patrick, what did you see from Drew Pyne today?
Yeah, as Marcus Freeman called it, up and down. I think that's pretty fair, and if you were looking at, like you said, a time for him to establish himself in the race, make a move in the race, this probably fell short of his expectations and anyone else's. But to his credit, ended it on a higher note in the last three drives there, where you started seeing a little bit more zip on passes, where he looked more comfortable in the pocket, looked more comfortable under pressure, where he was really stepping into and finishing throws, where you saw a lot of the misses, whether they were higher or lower, where he's just kind of dancing around the pocket a little bit, right. And then under pressure, when he kind of feels that and would kind of throw it off his back foot, and there wouldn't be a lot of zip on it, or it wouldn't be on target. I think that's what led to a lot of what you saw early on and kind of the bumps there. But really drove into a few throws. One he made to Michael Mayer on the sideline, one he pushed downfield to, I think it was Jaden Thomas late in the first half. So At least a credit to him for sticking with it and being able to put that together. But all told, probably not quite the move you wanted to see, or that he wanted to see, for anyone who's thinking Pyne's going to really, really push Buckner and stay neck and neck in this thing into the summer, into fall camp.
Yeah, and I mean, it's pretty difficult to play for both sides, right? Drew Pyne wasn't getting any rest in the first half, and the first half was simulated to resemble pretty much a true college football game. There were stoppages, there were Peacock TV timeouts, but when Pyne's going back and forth, playing for the blue team, playing for the gold team, hard to get a rapport with not just your wide receivers, your offensive line. You're constantly looking at different things. You're seeing every single defender that Notre Dame has to offer, and there are some pretty good ones. Jordan Botelho picked off a Drew Pyne pass. Maris Leofau picked off a Drew Pyne pass, and those were kind of combo interceptions, what I like to call them, where someone was in the face of Drew Pyne. You mentioned the pressure. It was there constantly throughout that first half, and then kind of look what I found for Jordan Botelho and look what I found for Maris Leofau. So we'll get to the defenders in a minute, and those are two of the guys who I think played pretty good football games today. But let's stick on the offensive side of the ball for now. Jadarian Price, if Steve Angeli wasn't the MVP of this game, it was the early enrollee freshman running back from Denison, Texas. What did you see from Price today?
A lot of what we saw in the viewings we got earlier in the spring. And granted, those weren't a ton, but that had been kind of the report of what had been happening behind closed doors, too, that he's really been impressing early on, and you saw it as a runner, as a receiver. You really can see some really impressive agility, quickness in the open field, ability to make you miss. You saw all of those. You saw the acceleration on that screen pass that he took for a 51-yard touchdown there where he outran, I think it was Ramon Henderson.
It was.
And really looking like a guy with a pretty dynamic skill set and versatile skill set where they really used him as a receiver a lot and not even just on that screen touchdown. And then a guy who can, one cut and go, make you miss on that one cut, a pretty dynamic-looking player that even if Notre Dame has 3 older running backs in front of him, those roles really haven't been sorted out yet. And so this was just kind of the latest instance of anytime you got to see him, whether it was in drills or a scrimmage or now today in the spring game, where each time you do see him, it's just a little harder to picture of how do they keep him off the field and whatever that looks like. And as they sort out these running back roles between all 4 of the guys in that room, and 5 when Pyne arrives in June, just hard to picture how he doesn't claim a couple of those that are notable roles, not mop-up duty roles.
Yeah, a couple of things that you mentioned there was Marcus Freeman said after the game, Jadarian Price is a guy that it doesn't matter if he showed up in January or June, he was going to contribute in some way in 2022. He already did in the blue gold game. Another thing you mentioned there is 4 scholarship running backs right now. It played out the way you think a spring game would. Chris Tyree's been a little hampered throughout the spring. I think he got 2 carries. Logan Diggs had a few more carries than that, but he got hit up in the shoulder, and he's had a little bit of a bum shoulder. As soon as that happened, he wasn't going to play much more. So this game kind of played out the way you think it would. Jadarian Price getting a lot of run. Audric Estime getting a lot of run. I thought Audric Estime looked really good too. Boy, is he hard to tackle. Notre Dame has some guys who can lay the wood, but it took about 3 or 4 of them to bring him down. But speaking of laying the wood, speaking of playing good defensive football, mentioned the score 13-10. Notre Dame obviously had a lot of really good defensive efforts today. Who stood out to you?
You mentioned the 2 linebackers, and Patel Hill, that's a good sign just that he's looking comfortable and at home in a home that looks sustainable instead of ping-pong around from Viper or Rover or is he this or is he that, and just like give him a singular focus and let him kind of channel the athleticism and the raw talent that he has there. I think you saw some of that today. Robbie Mills, remiss not to mention him, playing mostly defensive end, kicked inside a little bit, mainly on a couple of passing downs there. Really, really disruptive, tough to block, a lot of what we also saw in the spring. Same goes for Howard Cross, really stood out in some of the earlier spring practices. Just really, really slippery, even though you hear it all the time, smaller size for an interior lineman, whatever. He just slips past defenders and gets in the backfield. We saw a lot of that. I think he put the heat on someone that led, it was a run play that he forced Estime outside and led someone else to making a tackle for a loss. And then in the secondary, I thought you saw some good things from Ryan Barnes before that targeting, probably Notre Dame's biggest corner outside of Cam Hart. You saw that physicality show up. Jack Kaiser, pretty active in the run game. Not really a surprise based on what you saw last year. Junior Tui Halamaka, Marcus Freeman called him the most college-ready of the 4 freshman linebackers. A guy who only played linebacker in high school, played inside linebacker in high school. I think you saw him look pretty comfortable out there in the middle in that defense and be able to show up, make a few tackles there. He wasn't overrunning plays, filling the right gap there, and even had a couple of plays there for tackle for no gain or a short gain or a tackle for loss. So good things from him. Jaden Mickey, a guy who's really stood out throughout the spring at corner. A couple of good moments there in coverage and as a tackler from him too, I thought.
Yeah, you went through a lot of guys right there. So
I hope I left you a couple.
If you didn't mention Prince Colley, which I'm not sure if you did or you didn't, I'll mention him again. I thought he was awesome. It's that athleticism at the linebacker position that Notre Dame might have been missing a little bit of last year, and the 3 guys that they mostly played. I thought he was excellent. I think he's going to be a big-time playmaker. You got to remember this guy's a true sophomore, so we get blue and gold message board questions all the time. How's Prince Colley looking? How's Prince Colley looking? You've got to remember that last year was his first year, and there was a big learning curve. He talked to reporters about that learning curve and said, I had a lot of things to learn. I had a lot of things to kind of just feel out for myself on the football field. I thought he looked like a tremendous football player today. I think he's going to make plays. Brandon Joseph looked pretty good to me as well. The tackling is something that we talked about a lot. Northwestern last year wasn't his best tackling year. At that position, you've got to be a sure tackler. I don't think Notre Dame's going to have too many issues. I think he's going to be comfortable here. And we didn't really see a lot of the ball skills today, but trust me, those are still there. He's going to make plays in the Notre Dame secondary. So all in all, like I said, probably a defensively dominated game, but I think there were enough offensive flashes here and there. We didn't talk a lot about the wide receivers today, but that's, what we've been talking about all spring is that Notre Dame need some guys to step up there. And I think fall camp is going to be really pivotal for those guys because Deion Colsley didn't have his best game. Lorenzo Styles wasn't targeted a lot. I think Jaden Thomas did some things, and Braden Lenzy looked healthy. So that's going to do it for us. Blue Gold Spring game. This was a good time. I think that the turnout was nice among alum and fans. And I guess now it's on to the summer, and we'll see you guys again in the fall here at Notre Dame Stadium.